Hi, my name is Doug Hennig. I'm the lead developer of the Stonefield Query family of products from Stonefield Software. In this video, I'm going to show you some of the new features in version 4.0 Stonefield Query. We're not going to cover all the features, but I want to show you those things that you'll probably find the most interesting and the most useful. For a complete list of all the new features, you can click on the Help button in any of the dialogues, and under the Stonefield Query topic, simply choose what's new in this version. And it gives a lot of detail on what's new in the report wizards, in quick reports, charts, crosstab reports, preview and output, the advanced report designer, and other new features. So that gives you a complete list of what's new. One of the first things you'll notice that's new in Stonefield Query version 4.0 is that you have more control over the preview or print process, and you get more information back. Let me show you what I mean. Let's go and create a new report. Call it, say, order list. And I'm going to go and grab, say, the order ID and total price. Now this will give us about a 50 or so page report. Normally in earlier versions when I preview this, it would just tell you that it was running the report and you didn't see a lot of feedback about what was going on until the report preview actually popped up. In version 4.0, when I hit preview, you'll notice a couple of things. First of all, the wizard, the quick report wizard, and the reports explorer are both going to sort of turn a darker color, and a progress dialog will pop up showing me information about what happens as the report runs. Also, you now have the ability to cancel a report run by either pressing the escape key or clicking on the cancel button, and it will be a lot more responsive than in earlier versions. So let's go and run the report. And as I mentioned, we are now seeing a progress dialog showing us what's happening. If I press the escape key, it stopped partway along. So instead of rendering the full 45 pages, it only gave us 27 pages. So it does show me what we got, what created, but it doesn't go and spend the time to run the whole report. Let's go and run that again. But this time I'm going to hit cancel earlier before it even started rendering any of the pages. Well, it was just grabbing the data from the database. In this case, because it hadn't even finished that step, it just stopped immediately and you're done. So this is kind of a nice feature. It gives you the ability to have more control over how that report gets run, and plus give you feedback over it. One of the new features in Stonefield Query version 4.0 is the ability to customize the relationships between the tables in a report. Let me show you an example. Let's do a report that shows total sales by customer. So I'm going to go and create a new quick report. We'll call it Customer Summary. And I'm going to grab the company name and the total price. And because I don't want to see details, I just want to see summary, I'm going to group on the customer name. I'm going to sum on the total price. And in step 5, I'm going to turn on summary. So now when I run the report, we see our total sales by customer. However, not all the customers are here. This only shows 89 customers when in fact I have 91 customers. The reason we're not seeing all the customers is because of the way that Stonefield Query grabs the data from the database. In technical terms, it does what's called an inner join, meaning that it finds companies and orders, and only the matches between them are retrieved. So if we have some customers that don't have orders, those customers aren't pulled from the database. So in earlier versions of Stonefield Query, what you'd have to do is to go into the advanced dialog and customize the SQL statement for the report, which meant that you had to be familiar with the SQL language, you have to be authorized to be able to use that feature, and so on. In version 4.0, it's much easier. In step 2 of the Customize Report Wizard dialog is the ability to customize relationships. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say that we want not those customers, only customers that match orders. We want all records for customers, whether there are matches in orders or not. So this will give us all customers, and for those who have orders, we'll see the total of their orders. For those customers who don't have orders, we'll see 0. So let's save this and preview the report again, and this time you notice it said that there were 91 records. And if I scroll down a little bit here, we can see that there's this FISA, which has 0 sales, and on the next page we also have Paris Specialties, which also has 0 sales. So those were those 2 customers that were missing from the earlier report. So the ability to customize relationships in a report means that you have now better control over how the data is retrieved from the database. In earlier versions of Stonefield Query, the only kinds of fields that you could summarize on were numeric fields. things like sales amount or quantity or things like that. In version 4.0, we allow you to summarize on non-numeric fields. So for example, let's say we want to show the most recent order by customer. So let's go and create a new report. We'll call it customer latest order. And we'll grab the company name, and I'm going to go and get the date ordered. Now, I don't want to show individual order dates. I only want to show the most recent one. So let's go and group on company name. And for date ordered, on the format page, we now have the ability to choose a summary type, which we didn't have before. So I'm going to choose highest, which means the most recent date. And again, we don't want to see all orders. We only want to see the summary of them. So I'm going to turn on the summary report option in step 5. When I run the report, we now see, organized by customer name, the most recent order that they've placed. So having the ability to do highest and lowest on non-numeric fields, like date fields for example, means that you have another option that you can choose for grabbing data from your database. In version 4.0, you can now specify how dates are formatted if you use them in the row of a crosstab report. Let me show you an example. Let's go and create a new crosstab report, and we'll call it sales by month and product. And I'm going to go and grab the date ordered, the total amount, and the product name. Now in step 3, we'll show the date ordered in the rows, the product name in the columns, and we'll have the sum of the total price here in the date area. Now I don't want to show individual dates like January 1st, January 2nd, and so on. What I'd like to show is the month that each sale was done in. In earlier versions of Stonefield Query, the only way that I could do that was to have the date appear in the column and format it as the month. In version 4.0, you can now specify how a date is formatted when it's in the row. So if we bring up the Properties dialog, on the Format page, you can see that you can choose to display the date as date, hour, week, month, quarter, or year. I'll choose month and run the report. And you can see that we now have our sales by product and by month. And so now we can see that for August of '94, here's our sales for Ellis Mutton, and for September, and so on. One of the most popular types of file format to output to from Stonefield Query is Excel data only. This gives you an Excel spreadsheet that contains the data from the report. One of the new features in version 4.0 is to output to Excel data only from a crosstab report. In earlier versions, you couldn't do that. You can see here that with this crosstab report I've selected, when I choose File, one of the formats now is Excel data only, which, as I said, wasn't available before. If we go and run this report now, we'll see that it gives us the data that makes up this crosstab report. And in fact, it looks very similar to the way that the crosstab report is formatted. However, this is not a true Excel pivot table, which is what a crosstab report is like. Instead, it just gives us the raw data, and if we wanted to create a pivot table, we'd have to do that on our own. One of the new features in Stonefield Query version 4.0, in addition to be able to output a crosstab report to Excel data only, is to output directly to an Excel pivot table. So let's choose File again, but this time I'm going to choose Excel pivot table from the list and run the report again. This time, instead of outputting the raw data, it actually outputs to an Excel pivot table. So now we can see that as a true pivot table, I can do things like filter on which products are chosen, filter on the dates. I can rearrange. I can put the product name over here and the date over here, and so on. So as a true pivot table, I can do all the typical things that I would do with a pivot table in Excel. So this is a handy new feature in Stonefield Query version 4.0 that we think a lot of folks are really going to enjoy using. There are a few new features in charts in Stonefield Query version 4.0. Let's go and create a new chart report. We'll call it Sales Chart. And I'm going to grab the product category and the total price, and we'll also go and grab the date ordered. And as you can see, Stonefield Query made some assumptions about what should chart where, and these assumptions are actually correct. We want to have the category in the x-axis, the sum of the total price on the y-axis, and the date ordered, which is formatted as year by default, as the series. So when we preview the report, here's our chart of sales by year and by product category. Now, a couple of new features. In step 4, one of the new features is to indicate how the series should be stacked. The default is side by side, so each of the columns are beside each other. If I choose stacked, that means they're actually going to appear on top of each other. So here's that chart report with the series now stacked together. So for each product category, the red is 1994, the green is 95, and the yellow is 96. We can also choose to stack it 100%, meaning that all of the columns are going to be the same height, and then the breakdown of the columns within that are going to be varying depending upon the total amount for that series. We can also do stack groups. You may, for example, decide that you want 94 to be by itself and then 95 and 96 to be stacked together. So the way that we'll do that is we're going to assign 95 and 96 to a particular stack group. So let's turn off all series up here. We don't want to change series 1, which is 1994. For series 2, though, we'll call that stack group number 1. And for series 3, we'll call that stack group number 1 as well. So now when I run the report, we can see that 94 is in its own column, but 95 and 96 are stacked together. Let's go back and take out the date ordered and make this into a pie chart. Let's preview the report. And you can see it shows our sales by product category. Now, we might decide that for those items that are below a certain threshold, we want them grouped together into a single other slice. So let's go and turn on group slices. We'll set that to either below percent, so say anything below 25% of the total. In this case, I'll choose below value. So anything below $150,000 in total sales, those will be put together into a single slice and they'll be labeled other. We can change that label if we want to, but we'll just leave it at other. When we run the report again, now we have much fewer slices. Beverages, confections, dairy products, meat, poultry, and other, which would be anything that was less than $150,000 in sales grouped together into a single slice. So there's a couple of new features in charts right there. Another new feature with charts is that you can now control where the chart appears when you add it to a quick report or to a crosstab report. Let's take this customer summary report I created earlier and edit it. And in step 5, I'm going to turn on chart, and let's edit the chart. And I want to show the company name and the total price. So when we preview the report, it shows us our data from the quick report. And when I go to the last page, here's my chart. A little bit messy because I have it sized fairly small, but I think you get the idea here. Now, what I want, though, is I want this chart to actually appear on page 1 rather than on the last page of the report. So that's a new option here. In step 2, under the size page, I can now choose to move this report, this chart to the top of the report instead. So when we preview it again, my chart's a little bit messy, but you can see it appears on the first page of the report, and then we have the data that accompanies that report that follows later on. There are several new features in the Advanced Report Designer. Let's go and create a new report. I'm going to call it Customers by Country. This will be a very simple report. We're just going to show country and company name, and we're going to group by country. So now when we preview the report, we can see that we have our customers organized by country. Let's go and make this into an advanced report. So I'm going to go to step 5 and turn on advanced layout and edit. And if we open up the property for a field, for example, you'll see that the dialog has been rearranged a little bit. There's a new dialog here, or a new page here called Dynamics, Rotation goes on its own page. So there's a few changes in the layout of the properties dialog. But one of the new features I want to show you is the ability to use gradient colors in rectangles. This is a solid light gray rectangle here. Let's make it into a gradient. So let's double click it to bring up the properties dialog. And on the style page, I'm going to turn on use gradient color. If you haven't seen a gradient before, it's essentially an area where a color transitions from one to another. You can see here, for example, in the sample that we're going from light gray to black. So it changes color as it goes along. What I actually want to do is to go from top to bottom, and instead of going from gray to black, I want to go from gray to, say, white. So let's go and save this. And let's preview the report. And you'll notice now that instead of being a solid light gray, this actually has a gradient which goes from this light gray down to white. So it gives you kind of a nice dynamic effect in the report. We've actually created a template that shows off, a couple of templates that show these things off. Let's turn off the advanced layout and choose a couple of different templates. There's one here called gradient template. So let's preview the report using that one. And you can see that it uses a gradient both in the this dark gray rectangle as well as these lighter gray group rectangles. There's another one called Valencia Orange, which is kind of a interesting looking template, and it uses gradients actually in a couple places, one of which is right here in the detail line. So every detail line in the report has a color over top of it, similar to those lined reports you probably saw in the past. But this is also shown with a gradient, so it goes from this sort of a pinky orange color down to white. Another new feature with advanced layout reports is the ability to output them to Excel data only. In earlier versions, if you output a report to an Excel data only spreadsheet, it gave you just those fields that appear in the report, and it would ignore any of the custom calculations that you may have done in the advanced layout. So let's go and change this into an advanced layout report again. And let's just add a really simple calculation here. We'll just put something relatively straightforward, like say upper of the company name. So this will be the uppercase name. Nothing too fancy, and probably not something that you do in a real application, but just to give you an idea. Now, in earlier versions of Stonefield Query, if I were to output this report to Excel data only, we would get only the country and company name. We wouldn't see the upper of the company name because that was a custom calculation. However, if I preview the report and choose to export it to Excel data only, we can see that not only are the country and company name fields, which were fields in the report layout, but we also see the uppercase company name as well, because as I mentioned, in advanced layout reports, output to not only Excel data only, but any of the data only formats, we do get any of the custom calculations defined in that report output as well. The last new feature I want to show you in the Advanced Report Designer is the use of a thing called dynamics. Dynamics allow you to conditionally change how something appears in the report on an item-by-item basis based on some settings for that item. For example, let's take a look at this employee images report that I've created earlier. Let's preview it, and we can see that we're showing the name and title and the photo of each of our employees. However, you'll notice that Andrew Fuller does not have a photo, and so even though we don't have a photo for him, the amount of space taken up by the photo is still used, which is kind of a waste. What we'd like to do is to only show photos at their regular size if a photo is there. If there is no photo, we don't want the extra space taken up. So let's add this report. And in step 5, I'm going to click on Edit to bring up the Advanced Report Designer. And you can see that this photo is taken up this much space. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make this much smaller. We'll make it only as big as necessary, and then we'll shrink up the detail band so it's much smaller as well. Now, of course, this would mean normally that photos would only come out as that tiny little square, which wouldn't be very good. So what we'll do is we'll bring up the Properties dialog for this picture, and we'll click on the new Dynamics tab. Dynamics, as I mentioned, allow you to specify something that could possibly change about this object on a record-by-record basis. So let's go and click on Add to create a new dynamic rule, and we'll call this Resize Photo. Now, the condition is that when the photo is not empty, in other words, when we actually have a picture for this person, we want to change the size of the image. So we'll say not empty photo. Now, the width and height of images are stored as 1/960th of an inch. We want this to be a couple inches by a couple of inches, so we'll say 1920 by 1920. So what this will do is that when the image is empty, this rule won't be evaluated, and so the image will only be that very small little square that we saw. However, when there is a photo for this person, then it will automatically change the size of the photo to 1920 by 1920, or 2 inches by 2 inches, and adjust the size of the detail band accordingly. So there's our dynamic condition. Let's say OK, and let's save this and preview the report again. And now you can see that for Andrew Fuller, who doesn't have a photo, there's very little space taken up. Dynamics don't just apply to images, they also apply to text as well, and rectangles. Let's edit this report again, and let's say that we want to change the title based on something about it. So let's bring up the Properties dialog for the title, and on the Dynamics page, let's add a new condition, and we'll call it the Vice Pres. So the condition here is that whenever the title equals Vice President, we want to change the text from the title to, say, Big Cheese. We could also change the font, and we can change the color. For example, let's have it come out in red. And maybe we'll make it bold. So now when we run the report, we can see that Andrew, rather than showing Vice President, shows Big Cheese in red. This is kind of a silly example, but you get the idea that you can use it to change things dynamically on a record-by-record basis about how this field appears in the report. So this is a very useful feature. One of the features you've asked for in version 4.0 is the ability to do exclusion filter conditions on fields that already appear in the report. Let me show you an example of this. Here's that customer summary report we created earlier, where it shows customer information and their total amounts. What I want to do is I want to only show those customers who bought something in 1994 but did not buy something in 1985. In other words, they were former customers. They haven't done anything with us lately, and so we want to maybe try to reconnect with them. So now that I know who they are, I can call them up and find out why they haven't been buying anything from us lately. So let's go and create a filter condition. And we'll say that the order date, the date ordered, is between January 1st of 94 and December 31st of 94. Now, this is the thing you couldn't do in earlier versions of Stonefield Query. If you tried to create an exclude condition using that same kind of, the same field there, you got a warning message saying that wasn't possible. Whereas now in version 4.0 it is. So again, I'll choose the date ordered is between, and this time I'll use January 1st of 1995 to December 31st of 1995. So this will give us those customers who ordered something in 1994 but did not order something in 1995. So when we preview the report, we can see that there are 4 customers, and here are those customers. So now we can contact them and find out why they haven't ordered anything from us for a while. One of the new features in Stonefield Query version 4.0 that we hope you'll never see is crash recovery. It's there for the rare occasions when something goes wrong in Stonefield Query, you get an error dialog and you have to get out. In earlier versions of Stonefield Query, if you were in the middle of creating a report, maybe you spent some time in the Advanced Report Designer changing the layout, moving things just the way you liked them to, and then because you made some mistake or something happened, you got an error, or it crashed, or something else happened. When you started up Stonefield Query again, you lost the work that you had done. So with version 4.0, it now has built-in error and crash recovery. Let me show you an example of this. Let's go and create a new report. We'll call it crash test. And I'm just going to go and create a simple one-field report, company name. But I'm going to go and purposely put in an error into this. I'm going to go into the advanced, click the advanced button to go into the customize report wizard. And I'm going to change the SQL statement for this report to something that's invalid. There is no table called customers XX. So by doing this, this will have a problem. So when we go and try to run this report, we get an error dialog. And we can do various things like contact technical support and so on. And we could choose to continue, but let's say for whatever reason I decide that I actually want to quit out of this error right now. So now Stonefield Query is gone and I've lost my report. So when I start Stonefield Query back up again and log in, by the way, here's another new feature in Stonefield Query. When the administrator logs in, there may be some reason why they need to display the setup dialog. For example, maybe you need to add some new data sources or change some other things. By clicking on this display setup dialog button, that actually brings up the setup dialog where you can change some of the configuration settings. But anyway, let's log in here as administrator. And you notice this dialog. It looks like you were editing a report when the program stopped due to a problem. Do you want to restore and edit that report? If you say yes, then it brings up the report exactly as it was when you finished it. In fact, it even has that same error in it as it was before. So now I can fix it and then carry on. So the idea here is that just because you've made a mistake or something happened to your system doesn't mean that you're going to lose all of your work. It will preserve any reports that you were working on and give you the chance to continue working on them after you restart Stonefield Query. So as I said, this is a feature we hope you never have to see, but it's there in case you need it. Well, that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed the new features in Stonefield Query version 4.0. Remember, for the full list of what's new, click on the Help button and take a look at the What's New topic. It'll go through all of the new features. Go ahead and take a look at them and see what new things you might find useful in your version of Stonefield Query. Thanks, everybody, and have a great day.